Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the weekly MMA Cycles Market Update. This is your host, Gianni DePoce. It's great to be back with you this week on Friday, the first Friday of December. And I'm joined this week by our special guest, Wyatt Fellows. Wyatt is an MMTA graduate and a farmer in his own right. So, Wyatt, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Good. So Wyatt makes me look like a drop in the bucket when it comes to farming. And he's a very good trader and analyst, and he displayed some exceptional understanding of MMA methodology in the most recent MMTA course. So he's also the author and editor of a new MMA grain report. And so we're going to interview him about grain markets in just a moment here. But before I do begin asking him questions, I'm going to run through some markets. It was a very interesting week in the U.S., coming fresh off of the holiday weekend trading. Markets were closed last week on Thursday and shortened trading day on Friday due to the Thanksgiving holiday. Strong performance on Wednesday of this week after Fed Chair Powell said that they might only be raising interest rates 50 basis points at the December meeting. So this came just the day, what was it? We had Mars trine Saturn on the 28th. And then we had Venus opposite Mars on the 1st of December. So a little bit of uncertainty there because, Mars is retrograde right now in the sign of Gemini. So was that some doublespeak out of the mouth of the central banker? But looking forward into this weekend, we do have Neptune going direct from its stationary motion in Pisces, and one of the most powerful signatures according to MMA studies. So we have to be on alert for reversals here. Taking a look at the NASDAQ, continues to underperform. No surprise given Saturn's transit through Aquarius. So Wyatt, any thoughts or comments on what's going on in equity indices?
Not too much, John, other than the S&P. I think the S&P is knocking on the door of that trend line that the Dow broke. Before. So
yeah,
just been keeping my eye on that personally.
No doubt. And, from a trend following standpoint, I think the high of mid-August is very important, one to keep an eye on. So let's take a look at interest rates, 10-year interest rate out near the lows of the week. So the correction in rates continues. And I think this is a tailwind for stocks in the short term, not to mention the US dollar continues to correct. But, we're in this heavy Venusian period at the moment, and Venus rules currencies. So on Sunday, December 4th, we have Venus square Neptune, and then we have Sun opposite Mars on the 8th, followed by Venus square Jupiter on the 9th, and then Venus will ingress into the sign of Capricorn also on the 9th of December. So be on alert for reversals in currencies. Venus also rules grain, so I'm going to ask Wyatt about those signatures in just a moment. So Wyatt, any thoughts on the dollar or interest rates?
Dollar, I'm kind of interested. That 104 levels, some pretty good support going back on some continuation charts. And like you said, you do have Venus Jupiter next week on the 9th. That may be important to currencies.
Yeah, indeed. So moving on, I want to talk about precious metals. Let's look at gold miners, because some big moves in metals this past week. And I think what's been most remarkable about this rally is the fact that metals made it through the previous heavy Jupiter period so nicely. And now we're in this Venus period, or Venus and Neptune period. So we'll see if this rally continues. But I think that's really a testament to the strength in metals. We'll pull up the ETF of silver, SLV, as well, going out at the week's highs. But I think that's a very good sign for metals going forward. And obviously, we have Jupiter set to ingress into the sign of Aries. We've been talking about that and the potential bullish implications for precious metals, because the sun is exalted in Aries and the sun rules gold. So I think that is how we can make that qualitative observation in that respect. So Wyatt, any thoughts on precious metals and what's going on in that space?
No, not really, other than, the MMA has been long metals, and that's been correct. So.
Indeed. Ray is the master of metals, no doubt. Last and certainly not least, I want to take a look at crude oil. And perhaps, Wyatt, as a farmer, you can maybe speak to what's been going on in terms of fertilizer, because, so much of it is natural gas based. So, let's just look at the whole, fossil fuel complex, so to speak. But with Neptune going direct this weekend, we're seeing a potential high that formed within the 3-day trading orb of this direct aspect. Not to mention we have Venus squaring Neptune this weekend. So, I think it's a volatile period for oil right now. And then with the square between Venus and Jupiter next week, I think oil is going to stay volatile for some time to come. So, Wyatt, can you speak to sort of what's happening in the fertilizer space for agriculture right now?
Yeah, so input costs have kind of stabilized and they've come down as oil has come off. They tend to lag though. So I mean, even though you see really high volatility in energies, input costs are, probably has a good 3 to 6 month lag, I would say. But the other thing you got to keep in mind is, we're coming into peak heating season, and natural gas can get pretty volatile in this environment, especially with some of these aspects coming up.
Okay, yeah, and then with the whole part of Jupiter going into Aries, could there be some sort of geopolitical inflammation around that time? I think that could be lead to a volatile period for energy as well. So, all right, Wyatt, let's talk about grains because you are very familiar with them. Let's start off with beans because we have a lot of traders and readers that like the soybean market. So you're a grower of beans, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about how you see this market and any potential signatures that on your radar or any technical factors that you think are important for beans.
Yeah, so I think beans are still due for a primary cycle low coming up here. I believe we're somewhere in the 19th or 20th week, so we're getting late. But I'm thinking that we're going to see something maybe next week in that Venus Jupiter timeframe on the 9th. I think that's an important week next week for grains. But overall, on a longer picture, bigger picture, South America is planting now, and they're set to raise one heck of a big crop. I think Brazil's looking at potentially producing 150 million metric tons of soybeans if weather cooperates. So those are the things that are in the back of my head. So while we're looking for primary cycle lows in these grains, unless weather becomes a factor, soybeans could see some headwinds coming up into the springtime, possibly.
Interesting. Do you want to look at corn or wheat next, or do you have any other comments on?
We can look at wheat. Let's look at wheat.
Okay.
I'm a little worried.
Feed the world, right?
Yeah, feed the world, but wheat just has been leading to the downside, and obviously money is coming out of grains right now, and you just spoke to potential geopolitical pressures as Jupiter may ingress into Aries. But wheat's not sniffing that out. It looks like it may have put in a 9-year high back there in the spring when we exploded on those Russia-Ukraine tensions. That probably looks to be a 9-year high there, and we're now going to come down into a 9-year low at some point. When or how that transpires, but that's kind of what wheat's showing me here in the near term.
That's a very interesting point you raised because, when you compare the long-term lows in wheat compared to corn or beans, corn had its low in 2020, wheat had its low in 2019, but, beans had its low in 2019, but wheat had its low in 2016. So wheat, from a long-term cycle standpoint, is a few years ahead of those other grains. So yes. I think, you raised a good point. This looks like a double top to the high from 2007. So maybe this was a 9-year high.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking so more and more. That's not to say we're not going to have, some kind of production hiccup or something where we can, retrace some of that down move we had. But I think, we got to have our sights set on a 9-year low coming up, 2023 to 2025 sometime. I mean,
oh, wow. So you're thinking that as early as next year, we could be due for a 9-year low.
Potentially, and that goes to some other things I look at and track as far as weather cycles, long term, that kind of stuff. It's somewhere in that time frame. But yeah.
Well, I'm gonna deviate a little bit from the script here. The sunspot cycles. Do you monitor those at all as it pertains to grain markets and commodity prices?
Yeah, very much so. And we've actually we peaked the sun's activity, and we're headed to a grand solar cycle minimum. So I know, global warming's a hot button topic.
Yeah.
But data is starting to show that, we're actually starting to cool a little bit.
Yeah.
And I mean, and these are long cycles though, John. I mean,
Right.
huge, long 200-year cycles.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, our growing degree days very well could start shortening up over the next 10, 15 years.
Indeed. Indeed. Let's look at corn. And I want to talk about Jupiter and Aries, because I remember back in the spring, you and I were having a discussion. And we had a warm spring, and I remember messaging you and saying, "Hey, Wyatt, I'm thinking about transplanting my crops, in the first week of May here. Do you think I'm nuts? But, with Jupiter having just ingressed into Aries, I think it could be a warm spring." That turned out to be a gamble that paid dividends. Nature doesn't always reward you like that, but these are the advantages that geocosmics can provide us. So Jupiter going back into Aries on December 20th. What are your thoughts on that, and how it might affect corn or other grain markets in general?
Yeah, I'm glad to bring that up. So Jupiter ingresses back into Aries in December 20th. I kind of got my sights set on those first 2 weeks in January. We'll have the USDA will come out with their final 2022-2023 production number for what the U.S. produced, and that report actually comes out on the 12th, January 12th. On that same day, Mars is going direct.
Oh, wow.
So I'm kind of got that area in mind for some volatile markets, and also South America will basically be right in the heart of their growing season. So maybe that the Jupiter ingress into Aries with that Mars energy, maybe that's a weather scare. Maybe that's some heat that gets pumped into the South America that will ignite some of these grains. Even if,
go ahead.
sorry, John. Even if the overall trend is starting to turn bearish, longer term in some of these grains, like wheat, maybe we have a sharp, hard, fast weather rally. Then that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Well, I think the biggest risk from a technical standpoint in corn is this, lower high here.
Yep.
But I think we should also, raise the point, as you talk about the possibility of a 9-year low in wheat as early as next year. Jupiter's only going to be in Aries for a few months. It goes into Taurus in May. And obviously Jupiter can either lead to an oversupply or lead to tremendous demand. So, do you have any other insight or input on that?
Well, I mean, maybe you look at what's going on. I don't know how close you follow headlines, but so they have kind of an uprising in the Netherlands, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, if you start taking production land out of growing food, well, we could end up with some shortages down the road. I mean,
yeah,
you can't. I don't know what their policies are, and I'm not going to talk about it. But I just, if that's the prevailing trend, yeah, that could lead to some severe shortages down the road.
Well, I will say this, we just completed the forecast book for 2023. And, one aspect I was looking at was the day that Jupiter ingresses into Taurus. I believe it's May 17th. It has a square. It forms a square to Pluto in 0 degrees Aquarius. And we know that Pluto has correlation to crop damage.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, that could lead to some impact. Maybe, it's a double-edged sword, right? More heat can mean a higher yield. Too much heat, or can mean drought, or dry out the crops. So maybe we get a bountiful harvest in South America, but by the time we come back to growing season in the U.S. in the spring in the northern hemisphere, perhaps that Jupiter square Pluto causes some issues, in the planting season. So, okay, I want to talk about cotton because we're coming around the corner in this discussion, and it's the last market that you cover in the MMA grain report. So this was actually. This was the market you did throughout the course. You analyzed throughout the course and just found some absolutely amazing correlations. And if I remember correctly, it's been a few months now. Was Saturn the key planet that you were looking at for cotton?
Yeah. So the huge long cycle. Yeah, Saturn, Pluto.
Okay.
Yep, Saturn, Pluto cycle is cotton. But cotton also is its intermediate cycles are really, really similar to the financial cycles, like stock cycles.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense because I mean we don't eat cotton, you know,
Right.
we wear it, or we, you know, utilize it through other means. And you know,
Right.
when things are going bad in the economy and we're in a downturn, well, yeah, we don't consume as much cotton, even though, I mean, we just came in, the US had its worst production, yeah, in a long time. So as far as a supply standpoint, I mean, it's bullish, but as you can see at the chart, we, you know,
Yeah.
we follow stocks lower.
Yeah. Well, not to spoil anything in the report, but you know, have you found this low that happened in October to perhaps be one of significance?
Yeah, I think that was a primary cycle low. Problem is that low before, right
This one?
there, that was a 14-month cycle low, and we've now taken
Ah,
that out. So I'm looking at cotton somewhere, I'm going to say April, give or take a few months for that would be, I'm looking for the 3.6-year cycle low there. It'll be the final 14-month cycle low.
yeah.
So and I kind of try to mesh that with, you know, the economic outlook. And you know, I mean, that overlaps with some times for some potential stock market cycles out there too. So
Well, not to mention those geocosmic signatures that we just discussed as well.
right.
So
Yep.
yeah. Okay, well, Wyatt, that takes care of everything that I wanted to cover with you today. So let me stop sharing my screen here. Everyone, I strongly encourage you to check out Wyatt's MMA grain report. We just sent out a sample report, correct? But the first official report will be published in January.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, Wyatt, thank you so much for joining me. We definitely got to have you back in a few months to discuss another grain market update. So enjoy the winter I'm in the Midwest like you are.
Yeah.
So we're coming into we're in the dark, cold season now. So we'll stay bundled up. And thank you everyone for watching. Check us out at www.mmacycles.com. We have a plethora of reports, you know, stocks, bonds, currencies, commodities, with a ton of great analysts. So thank you all for watching. We'll see you same time, same place next week.